I always say it's important to have like a healthy paranoia.
Yes.
Just a little paranoia, not too crazy, not too heavy. Just
Somebody
something.
said only the paranoid survive.
You gotta sit up straight in your chair.
Yeah.
You can't slouch. There's no slouching in business.
Welcome back to the Startup Junkie podcast. My name is Daniel Koonce, and I'm joined today with my co-host Jeff Amerine and our guests Zach Hill and Arlton Lowry with Few.io. Thank you guys for coming in today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Now, give us the origin story. This is the Wolverine part of the story, right? Talk about when you realized you had titanium nails and could do amazing things.
Oh man, that's
You're not a Marvel guy, or
Oh no,
X-Men guy?
absolutely. I suppose I should take that one. So the Few came out of a conference I organized called Made by Few. Started that in 2012.
I've still got the stickers.
I saw the poster.
And
actually.
there haven't been too many creative conferences that were much better than that, I'll tell you.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I put a lot of effort in those events and try to inspire, uplift the community. So yeah, it came out in 2012, started the conference, saw a need for something like that here locally to inspire and kind of foster creativity in the community throughout the States. We brought in folks that were not just designers, but developers, entrepreneurs, things along those lines. And but anyway, 2 years in, I was able to break off and start the company, Few. 2 folks, 1 client, and $0. It was, we started out with nothing. It was
And 10 years later.
And 10 years later, I think we're sitting at 25 people. We bought a building down in Little Rock. We have our headquarters down there, and got folks in 12 states, something like that.
From coast to coast.
Now, Zach, were you right at the beginning, or you came in?
No, I came in
because you were at
and I was
360.
Yeah,
right?
I came in and I went to CJRW for a bit.
Right.
And then Arlton took me to lunch and pitched me on coming and joining Few and really leading the show as the CEO.
Yeah.
And so I came in 2017, and then 2018 I was lucky enough to buy into the company and partner with Arlton as his partner. So and then it's just been magic ever since, as you can imagine.
And it's, listen, it is, we've seen the rise and fall of agencies of various types. Doing it well for 10 years is no small trick.
Oh, absolutely.
What's been the key?
Well, staying humble and being willing to evolve and change. I think that's the thing about maintaining a business is not getting stuck in a rut and changing when things change and not pushing against it. Zach mentioned coming out as CEO and a partner now. That came out of a conversation and some with Christian Anderson. He had the suggestion because, personally, I'm not a CEO type person. I understand my strengths and my weaknesses, and we needed someone to come in to fill that role. And Zach was at the top of the list, and luckily he was willing to come in and join the craziness. So
you enjoy the point A to point B stuff, right?
Yeah, and I mean. And I always have, through, the ARC challenge and stuff like that, I've always had a heart for product and startups and things like that. But I've worked heavy in the agency model. So it was kind of a best of both worlds for me because I always wanted to be digital and product focused and centric. But I knew how the model of an agency operated for the most part. Don't always get it right, but for the most part. And I knew kind of what Few was bringing to the table. And so I just knew there was a lot of upward trajectory ahead of us if we kind of stepped into this. And so, it's been, and like Arlton said, I think the secret is not getting too comfortable, enjoying the wins, but not, being, not feeling like you got it made or anything. Cause there's been plenty of moments over just the last 4 years where it's like, man, this is great. We're rocking and rolling. This is on, autopilot. And then you get something like a pandemic that comes along or something like that. Which fortunately was actually coming out of that is where we saw a lot of our growth.
Sure.
But then obviously you see, slowdowns and things just like right now in the economy, it always makes an impact. So you just have to be willing to keep a pulse on everything and understand, where things are going. So
I always say it's important to have like a healthy paranoia.
Yes.
Just a little paranoia, not too crazy, not too heavy. Just something.
Somebody said only the paranoid survive. Right?
You gotta sit up straight in your chair.
Yeah.
You can't slouch. There's no slouching in business.
I think at any stage of growth, I think that hunger and also that apprehension about the other shoe might fall at any time keeps you from getting complacent.
Absolutely.
Complacency and hubris are the things that tend to lead to bad outcomes.
Well, the wonderful thing about the company, again, 10 years, every year has been something different. And we've grown in all sorts of ways.
Figured out how to adapt, right?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the thing is every year brings a new challenge, and we challenge each other, we challenge our folks. We have there was many years we worked flat. We didn't have a structure in place. We didn't have an org chart. Now we have an org chart, and it's made a whole difference in the organization. Same thing with process and planning and structure, making sure that there's things in place for policies and all sorts of things. And so, it's every year, again, it's something new. And being willing to change, I think is
I got one more
success.
question before I'm going to turn over to Daniel, because I know he's actually prepared. And
you got things?
I've got a couple questions.
I see what's happening here.
But one more question, and I think it's real interesting because, there's something getting through 1 year of survival. There's something getting through 5 years of survival. You're about to celebrate your 10th year. Talk about what the culture has been like. I mean, you guys have to have a pretty well-defined culture as a company. How would you describe it?
Oh, wow. Well, I was putting together some stats for somebody coming in doing a pitch or something. I can't remember what it was. I was pulling all these stats together about the company. Our tenure at the company, I think, is 5.5 years, something like that. And that's something. When I saw that, I was like, wow. I realized, wow.
That's not typical for software development agencies. I mean, they tend to have a lot of turnover, right?
Absolutely.
People can be a little bit mercenary.
No. I mean, that's a thing in our industry, especially if you go to larger markets like LA and New York. That's how the younger generation actually, get raises. They have to every year. They have to jump to somewhere else in order to get a raise because they're not valued in the company. That's something we are really particular on, is valuing our employees. Empowering them, trusting them, giving them the tools to collaborate together. We don't have anybody that's toxic or anything like that. We trust them. It's they are the company. Like Zach and I, we just kind of like we're sitting here pretty faces at the top. It's like the company would not be what it is without our team, and we are so fortunate to have so many talented, wonderful people to work with day in and day out.
They come and stay because they feel like they're empowered and trusted.
Absolutely.
It sounds like
I mean,
and we've known them. Most of our leadership team, number one, to Arlton's point, as compared to larger markets, most of our leadership team is Arkansas. Either based or they're from Arkansas.
Sure.
So we've known them, we've worked with them. There's a mutual respect that's been built outside of just like, hey, I'm your boss, kind of thing. But the goal is to empower and, ultimately, you want to be able the company to operate in a format that doesn't require you to have to be there.
Right.
We want to be there to, enhance and provide another layer of, representation. And if we were just the pretty faces, I think we could pick prettier faces when it comes down to it.
I misspoke. I'm sorry.
But really, like Arlton said, I mean, it comes down to having great people, and we've been lucky to, have folks that have been, the first employee at Few is still at Few.
That's amazing.
He's one of our
9
design
years
directors.
in.
That's amazing.
So that's just wild.
You get
Well,
good people, you take care of them,
tell
you
you
work on
what,
interesting projects.
I tell you what, that was probably one of the scariest things, is hiring somebody and feeling responsible for their well-being, their family, their mortgage. I remember early on at the company, we would somebody would be having a baby or buying a house, and I felt like I was having a baby or buying a house. It's like, oh man,
It's kind of on you, right?
yeah, no,
It
it's
really
really.
is.
We're not just responsible for our people; we're responsible for their families and the people that rely on them, and so we take that very seriously.
Yeah, that makes sense. So. Daniel, jump in.
Yeah. What percentage of your team do you think is remote?
Let's see. It's probably almost even. It's probably 50%. I mean, and now let me clarify, even though we have an office in downtown Little Rock, a beautiful space in Soma, we operate still in a completely remote structure. So we lean on the office whenever we're doing kind of team gatherings. Clients are coming in, because we even have clients that are in Houston that will come in to meet in Little Rock, or we'll go down there and stuff like that. So it's nice having the space. It's used for a ton of community events too. But still, even the people that are Central Arkansas, we have a handful up here in Northwest Arkansas. They still operate. We operate as a remote company. Because we've been operating as a remote company even pre-pandemic. That didn't force us into a remote structure. We had already worked out a lot of the efficiencies, and we saw it actually work for us, because it was one of those formats where it became blatantly clear if someone was engaged, working, doing their stuff, because
you could be outcome oriented, right?
Exactly. We were able to kind of use the communication tools like a Slack and stuff like that to know, and then the outcomes and the results to know, hey, these are the people that take initiative. These are the people that we can, trust, whether they're in the office or not, kind of thing. So,
on top of that, just to kind of expand on the office thing, when we bought that building, it was kind of the perfect building for us for what we need for our company. It's 2 stories. There's apartments upstairs, and then we have our office downstairs. And so when we were thinking about okay, well, let's get a physical location. Let's have a space that's few that people can walk into, get a sense of our culture, our company, what we value. It's made a lot of sense, because now we have a place for our employees to stay, our clients to stay, friends, colleagues, and any things along those lines. It's like, what is an office in 2024? What should it be? And you guys read the articles and see the headlines just as much as I do of all the vacant space in larger markets like New York and elsewhere. And I think there's a bit of a kind of a struggle right now figuring out what does it mean to have.
We built that space out to be a collaborative space, a connection space.
You were ahead of the
community.
You were
space.
kind of ahead of the curve on that, because that's the way the whole world has gone from. It doesn't matter whether you're punching out license plates or writing code. You're going to be there from 8 to 5. And there'll be a minder with a clipboard checking on you. Those days are dead.
Yeah,
for sure.
No, it's definitely a different world, and we just, again, since with our mentality, we've always been a remote-based company. And a space is just nice for, like I said, to kind of showcase who you are and what you value.
That's largely what this has become.
Absolutely, this is a great.
I mean, this is any given day. Monday is the day that we get together for a staff meeting and checkpoint and whatnot. But and even then, we'll have people that are working out of the Ledger in Bentonville, because we've got the fuel program up there.
Wonderful space.
We've got the folks in Conway that are out of the Arnold Innovation Center, but we're hybrid at best. And there's plenty of days where I'm in here by myself, or there's nobody in here if we don't have people co-working. And I think that's just kind of what it's become.
Yeah, I mean, and I think there's no going back on that. I know some of the companies are trying to claw people back into the office. I don't think that's a healthy way of going about it. At best, we'll have a hybrid kind of situation going forward. That's just the way the world is these days. I remember I spent about 6 months a few years ago. I spent about 6 months traveling. I went to Indonesia and Singapore and Australia, and I worked remotely. Yeah, I had to get up at 1 a.m. and go to work, but that's the way the world is. I was working out of a co-working space with people from around the world doing the same exact thing. It doesn't matter where you're at. As long as you're doing your work, you're being productive.
About 15 years ago, maybe a little less, I was in Nova Scotia, and we were talking about all this sort of placemaking, where people were and whatnot. And this guy he was an entrepreneur, PhD, had been an instructor and whatnot. He said, it doesn't really matter where you are. It matters a whole lot more of who you're with.
Well, there's also
who the people are.
Well, I'll say this as well. You've kind of, in a remote-based structure, you've got to be your own boss. You got to keep yourself in check.
You got to manage yourself well.
And that's not for everybody.
No, it's not. Some people need the structure,
minors, right?
Yeah, they need to have.
Well, and those are the indicators, like I was talking about. That usually those are the folks where we don't have a lot of turnover, but those are going to be the first ones that we're like, all right, if we have to be reminding you to update, or because we're not sitting next to you and can turn and ask you, or you don't feel like, oh, I need to say something before I get offline or whatever, that's usually an indicator of, okay, this may not be the best fit of our culture, because it's just a constant communication flow, even though we're not sitting next to each other, every day.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like you guys have definitely nailed the collaboration part, especially as a hybrid remote company, which is a big thing. I saw on your website, you guys really hit on collaboration. You guys also really hit on curiosity. So what do you do to promote your team to stay curious and not stay comfortable in their jobs?
Well, I think part of it is it comes naturally, because in our industry you have to.
You have to.
So I mean, we the Apple Vision Pro came out. We went out there and bought them for the team to engage with and stuff like that, because soon after that we're getting asked, hey, we need to build this. We need to do that's just the same thing with like new tech like AI and everything that's coming on these days. You have to stay engaged, or else you're quickly going to be considered, oh, well, they're not the technology team that I need to look at to really take me into the future. And so we just encourage that. And so, like, again, going out and making an investment of purchasing some Apple Vision Pro headsets just to get the engagement, so that curiosity just becomes natural.
Well, it's part of the hiring process too. Whenever I'm in the hiring seat, everybody has their kind of their own dynamic of how they go about it. But one thing I do, I'm reminded of this, one of the designers out of Miami that is on our team, I have a 30-minute conversation with them. Any candidate that we are considering, first thing I do is I have a 30-minute conversation. I don't talk about their role. I don't talk about what they're going to be doing. I just talk about their interests, who they are as a person, where their head's at. And I look for that curiosity. I mean, it's because I know that if you can find people that are curious, they're going to be curious for you.
Yeah.
And I remember her thing. I was like, I can't remember what exactly. I was like, what are you learning right now or something? And she was telling me about how she's spending a lot of time at the moment. She's a very curious person, but she was learning about mycology, and I was like, "That's random."
So random.
And I loved it. I was like, "Oh my god, that sounds amazing! Like you're perfect." I mean, now she's like learning Japanese to like write Japanese or something like that. I was like, "Oh my god."
This girl's curious.
But the thing
Definition
is,
as a
guys,
designer, was she going to be a designer? You got to have that.
She's
kind of
amazing. Like she does some coding as well. Like she does some. That's the thing is like it's going to help us keep ahead of the curve when it comes to trends and dynamics with people, what people expect with experiences online. A strategy around things. I mean, if you keep people that are curious on your team like that, I mean, you're kind of hedging your bet towards staying innovative.
Related. How are you guys thinking of it since you brought it up? AI, generative AI, machine learning. What's the play? Some people look at it and they're like, "Oh, that's going to put agencies out of business." I don't think so.
I think
it's a force multiplier. But what do you guys think?
So I'll go first. I spent a lot of time thinking about it.
Yeah.
I'm currently listening to the book. I can't remember the guy's name who just recently joined as the head of AI for Microsoft. It's The Coming Wave. I would encourage your audience to read or listen to this book. It's fabulous. I think he was one of the co-founders of DeepMind.
Okay.
And he goes in there and he kind of lays it all out. I think that's the interesting thing. But my perspective on AI is it's a tool and it's going to support people in their roles. It will replace some work, but it's not going to be this crazy like bulldozer. So I look at it like this. So you have 100 developers that can do this amount of work.
Right.
Now you have 100 developers that can do this amount of work. I mean, it's only going to increase productivity and efficiency. And so that's how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We had this guy named Tim Creasy on the Innovation Junkies podcast, the one that I do with Standridge, and he's the chief innovation officer for a company called ProSci, and that's all they do is think about innovation facilitation. He said, think about AI, generative AI, as not an oracle that's all the knowledge in the world that's going to tell you exactly what to do, but as a really good intern. And that's kind of the way to think about it. Somebody that's curious and is going to be able to go research things. They're not going to have the time on earth experience, even as AI, to know all the answers. All the intuition.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That's kind of an interesting perspective.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think, and to that point, really the underlying value comes from its ability to process and understand data sets.
Yep.
And really the biggest from a what we tell our client standpoint, the big, because we get hit up all the time for people just like AI, let's do something with AI. And we try to understand, what are you trying to
What's
get?
the goal?
What are your goals?
What's the
What are you trying to
strategy?
accomplish? Are the key questions, but also, it's got to be trained. It's got to have the knowledge comes from the data. So there are great companies out there that are, aggregating data that you can lean on, and also pair up your data, with that. But the companies that have the data that have been ahead of the curve from a data gathering and aggregation standpoint are going to be the ones that are the best, suited to really forge ahead into the new world of AI. And really it's going to be exactly what we're talking about, creating efficiencies and better understanding around their existing customers, their audiences, what markets they need to be targeting moving forward and stuff like that. And so, and how we go about do that, and how do we position products, whether that be an app or a website or whatever, to really take that data and create the best experience and the best output for them.
It really comes down to the strategy. Buzzwords are great, and there's I'm a huge tech nerd, and I keep up with stuff like that. I love it. But the thing is, especially when it comes to clients and just in general, if you have your business, is invest in the strategy first.
Right.
Don't just be like, I just need, we need to add AI. It's like, okay, well, that's great and all, but like, what do you want to
What are you trying to get out of it?
Yeah, and I think that
reminds
is
me
the
a lot
thing.
of the late 1990s. It's like, well, we're an automotive parts business. Let's just add freaking .com at the end, and then next with the PowerPoint slides, let's go ahead and go public while we're at it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you mentioned AI kind of as a tool, and I had a professor last semester with a super interesting perspective. He said AI is not going to take jobs. People who know how to use AI effectively
Absolutely.
are going to start taking jobs.
It's a toolkit.
It's
for
a toolkit.
productive
It's
people.
not.
Yeah. I
No,
agree with
that's
you.
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just thought that was interesting.
No, that's a very good point. I mean, that's something that I think that's a sentiment that's kind of gone around quite a bit, and I think that makes the most sense. I mean, it's AI is so powerful. And I'm what's next? Yeah, I mean, it's going to be wild. One thing I was thinking about, let's get on a tangent, but one thing I've been thinking about here recently is that, in the 90s, you knew, let's just, for an example, you knew what was happening in the next year. So you'd say like in 1991, you kind of had a relatively understanding, like, okay, what's happening in 91. Well, now 2025, what is going to happen in 2025?
Right. What's next?
And so I think
true.
I think there is that sentiment, and there's that kind of anxiety, I think, in our culture and in our society at the moment. But the thing that I go back to is just the strategy, making sure that these are all just tools. Just how are you going to use them properly?
Exactly. Well, we've talked a lot about kind of the culture and some of the strategy, what you're doing in AI and whatnot. What do you look for in customers? What's your ideal customer profile? Who is engaging most with you?
So, yeah, I mean, for the most part, it's startups, usually funded startups.
We love working with startups.
Yeah,
It's so much
groups
fun.
that are, a lot of times we're offering a service where we're truly helping them build an MVP and less of an MVP that is just like, hey, I'm pulling together all these random tools just to make it work and prove out the concept. There's got to be an underlying understanding of that. Like, we need to build something, even though it's very simple from an MVP standpoint, it's still scalable. It can continue to be built upon. That's how we approach anything that we're going to build. Like, there's a time and a place to hack together a WordPress website to prove out your concept, 100%. But when it comes time to like, hey, we're ready to scale, you need the infrastructure to allow that. And we're trying to build the infrastructure, but and it forces you into building the most basic functional product that you can get into the market and continue to build on top of it. But then also, groups that have software that, that it has aged or the user experience is poor, things of that nature, they turn to us because we're pretty uniquely positioned in the sense that we can bring both those things to the table, both the design, user experience, but also, build this product out with scalability in mind. We can also even help take, products to market. So it's a lot of times what we're trying to do is help a group get from, A to B to C and they can work with one partner to do that, but then set them up and even help them build into D, which is, hey, we've closed on our Series A or Series B. We know, in the long run, it doesn't make sense for you to, have an agency be the backbone of your company. But we want to take the partnership approach of, hey, let's help you build that out.
Right.
So, I mean, we've even done placements.
That's what I was going to
team
ask.
members.
You set them up to find an
exactly.
architect.
Yeah,
or
we help bring
developer.
people in, help them build out the infrastructure. And so we have a great relationship with a fitness app that we built that they did exactly that. We helped them build out their product, worked with them for a couple of years. Then we helped them kind of build out their own team. They still turn to us every other month with a new feature that they need designed or some strategy. And then like, hey, we're talking about white labeling this for others. We need, our team's busy. Can y'all help us? And it just creates a nice
strategic
partnership.
flex resource
Exactly.
for them.
Well,
right?
the thing is that we're terrible at marketing ourselves. You go to our social media. I'm sure our last post was probably last year, and so we're terrible about talking about ourselves. And so we're getting better at it. We have some initiatives and some goals for the year to.
But if you had the bias between steak and sizzle, steak is probably the better way to go, right?
Absolutely. But the thing is, so that leaves our reputation and being able to deliver for our clients and them referring us to other individuals, other organizations. And so we take that relationship, like Zach said, that partnership relationship very seriously, because that's kind of our calling card, is being able to deliver for our clients. And, to go back with to the startup stuff, we love solving problems. We're natural kind of, both of us are kind of natural kind of problem solvers. And again, getting back to curiosity, and we love delighting users. It's nothing, we want to design and build the right product, not just a product.
Right.
And it goes back to what I was saying. We mentioned before the starting the podcast, like the ARC Challenge. Both of us have gone through the ARC Challenge.
Yeah.
We have that experience of going through accelerators. We know what it's like to be a startup and having to grind and being scared and being like, oh my gosh, I got to sleep in a room with 3 other guys for 13 weeks or something.
Just to make it work.
Just to make it work.
Yeah.
And, we've raised capital. We've helped startups at all sorts of levels and different funding levels and stuff. And we just love solving problems. We love working with those groups.
Yeah.
There's an energy there. Obviously, look at what you're doing here. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to watch people succeed and be a part of that.
I mean, it's obviously, that's why we've done what we've done for 15 years, because it's an important part of the process, and not everybody can do it. Not everybody has the patience to do it. As an agency, how do you manage the risk associated with that inherently comes with having a startup as a client?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, and that's why I did, you notice my little caveat, like usually funded startups are usually ones that
so they
like,
got to be at a certain stage.
So there's
where
a certain, well, and
yeah.
yes and no. I mean, some have either self-funded to a certain degree so they could build their MVP, and then it's like, hey, we're helping them get to the next level.
But they got an ability to pay.
Or it's they've built their MVP.
Yep.
There are a couple guys in the dorm room. They built their MVP. They've gotten, some initial funding. Now let's actually build out the scalable, platform. We've proven our concept. But we also offset that with a lot of enterprise level groups, hospitals, banks. We work with a ton of those. But most of what they all have in common is they're coming to us, like Arlton said, to solve problems.
Right.
Like they have a challenge, and some of that may be a marketing challenge. So it's more of the user experience of what's happening on their website. But some of it is like, hey, we have this concept, this product, this app, and it's usually coming out of an innovation arm or some kind of initiative to say, we want to accomplish this. So we have a lot of groups like that. So really the key, common denominator there is just the innovation and this mentality of, hey, we know we have a problem. We need help solving it. And we know that, or we have at least a feeling that user experience and scalability and all these things are going to come into play in us actually solving this problem.
Well, what's wonderful about us is that we can provide that understanding of how to solve a problem, and then we can help them solve it.
Right.
That's ultimately what we provide. And we do that. We work with a number of startups organizations. We provide the strategy around how to solve something and let them decide if they want to move forward or not. We don't hold people down and be like, you have to work with us. It's more along the lines, we want people to succeed.
Sure.
And their success is our success. us.
Yeah,
That's how
I mean,
we look at
it's
it.
remarkable if you can go through and do the assessment and kind of guide them to this is the plan and give them the choice. More often than not, they're going to go with you. Just because you've
well, I
done
use
that
the
part with them.
with clients. We get into conversations. I use the the building analogy of any sort. I mean, that's what you're doing here. And I use the hey, we're going to start no different. Where does that start? You start with an architect. You start with a plan. Because if you don't have the plan, number one, the cities require it a lot of times. But if you don't have the plan, you're just building and you're trying to figuring it out as you go. And what we want to do is like, hey, we're gonna create the plan. And just like whenever you go from an architect, you can go out and you can actually get bids from various contractors to build it. But the ones that understand what you're trying to accomplish are going to be the best partner for the long run. So a lot of times we're laying out a plan that could basically be taken and implemented by them or another group or whatever. But yes, through the relationship. And again, I think it becomes very clear that we definitely, as a partner, we want to see them succeed. And so we've actually laid out a plan that not only says, well, you need to build something that's, $500,000 here. We're saying, ultimately over the next 2 or 3 years, that might be what you need to be considering to get to where you want to go. But here's where you start. Yeah. And here's the first thing you need to do.
You guys help them think through what are the most critical features and functions they have as soon as, so that they're not, it'd be easy if you think about what a version 3 or 4 would look like to say it's $500,000 or $1 million, but you mostly don't need that right away.
Well, you want to get the foundation right.
Exactly.
You want a strong foundation to build from. We've worked with a number of startup and organizations that, they typically from bigger markets that'll come to us and they'll have some kind of app or some kind of platform and they're wanting to add, I don't know, an Android app, or they want to add a certain functionality or something along those lines. And we have to look at it and we have to go in the code and a lot of times a lot of folks will cut a lot of corners, they'll cut a lot of costs. All of our folks are US based. We don't use anyone in other markets overseas or anything like that. We don't, so we pay people what they're worth. And we get a lot of value out of that. Sure. And we may not be the cheapest around, but we're going to make sure that whatever we produce for you is the right thing and it works and scalable. And you wouldn't believe, I'm sure you've had many conversations of folks that come in and they just have something, but it's like, it's terribly built. And they want to do all this stuff with it. They're very ambitious, and then it's like, well,
Yeah, they found somebody on one of the on gig economy sites, and they could build it for cheap. And
a prototype is fine. Prototype, do what you have to do to get something figured out. But.
Yeah, and we probably lose a client every week to something overseas, but we also probably every month gain a client that has fired their overseas.
They've tried that.
They've tried it. They probably spent a third of what it maybe would have cost with us, but now they spent that third, and now they're spending what it would cost with us.
Sometimes they spend up 6 figures.
Oh yeah, I mean, and it just kind of depends on, how well the other group's sales team was. A lot of times, like how much money they could actually get out of them. But again, we operate, and I think that's one of the things. We do a lot of work in larger markets and other places, and at first, whenever I'd have these conversations, I always was kind of like, oh no, we're in Arkansas. It's kind of random and things like that. But I think, it's ultimately been a value because, they realize like, hey, we're not here, this group in New York is not small potatoes to us. They may not be the biggest thing ever, but like if they go to, a group up there or the West Coast or something like that, they're getting, something, they're just outsourcing it overseas. It's like they don't really care about the success. It's just let's just produce something, get it out the door and move on to the next thing. And we'd rather see a longer term relationship build out of that and see that success be built.
Well, we're both from Arkansas, and I think we're both from rural Arkansas.
It definitely plays a role. Yeah.
And so I think that plays.
Which part?
I grew up in Northeast Arkansas, Black Oak area. Do you know where that's at?
Sure.
John Grisham and Jim Dandy.
I'm from Beebe, Arkansas.
Beebe. So Beebe and Black Oak.
Yeah, a lot of gravel roads and stuff like that. So, I think that growing up in that culture of the South, I think there's a sense of like, wanting to treat people the way you want to be treated. Kind
Absolutely.
Of thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
I
And so
agree.
that's what we bring to the table is that mentality. And you go to larger markets and everybody's trying to make a dime, and it's very fast paced and turn around and all these things. And there's some value to that, but it's we bring a different dynamic.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty good DNA for a customer facing, service oriented business to have that kind of an orientation. I think.
Yeah,
I think it matters.
we really do want to put out the right product. And I think that's you say like, how did you make it 10 years? It's like that's a huge part of it.
yeah.
Well, it's very interesting relationship wise. I mean, most and not every project goes perfect, as you would imagine, but we try our best and we try to make sure everything is done the right way. And if something is off the rails, we make it right. Kind of thing. The clients in other markets and stuff, it's like you can tell they've never experienced that or they rarely experience that. So it's like it's like they're just they're with us. They're just like, man, these guys, they are out of Arkansas, but they do great work and they actually care about what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it's like those relationships, it's so funny because they get very strong. And you would think your strongest relationships would be the ones in your backyard, which they are very strong.
Sure.
But so often it's just like, man, like they're as invested in us as we are in them. It seems like
a lot of
times
parts of the
because-
country, they're used to it being transactional.
Yeah.
And a lot of rough elbows and cutthroat and all that. And so when they find something that's different, I think it's an eye opener.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Daniel, jump in.
Yeah, talking about just kind of customers in your backyard, you guys just collaborated with the Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts
Yeah.
for the Story Project.
Yes.
And that just
you saw that.
that just got nominated for a Webby Award, did it not?
No, absolutely. So that's I'm not sure. I'm sure if a lot of folks in your audience are aware of this, but the Webby Awards are kind of like the Oscars for our industry. They're
That's
it's,
badass.
It's a
Yeah.
big
That's
deal.
very cool. Congratulations.
I mean, thank you. It's a big deal. I think they had 13,000 submissions from around the world this year, and we our work was in the top 12%, and we were one of 5 for a category. So
Yeah, you guys were
And-
the
That's outstanding.
net art category, I believe.
yeah, and so the Story Project is that was dreamt up by the organization over there, but it was a wonderful project to work with them. Amazing team. If you guys haven't been down there, check out the Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts. You should. It's a very beautiful building, very thoughtful group. But it's the project was a lot of fun. And we're proud that our team was able to rise to the challenge and put that out there somewhere.
What was your guys' role in that project?
We designed and built
the
every
whole
bit
thing.
of it.
You did all the
Yeah,
technical work.
Exactly.
Yeah, we did all of it.
So,
Yeah.
and we've been partnered with the Museum of Fine Arts since about the time they opened the new renovated space down there and stuff like that. And so, handling a lot of web and application work for them. We built a whole mobile guide, so when you're on premises, you have a good understanding of where everything's at and any kind of specific events that are going on that day and things like that. It kind of gives you a tour, and so it has all the audio tours in there. So we leaned on inspiration from the Whitney Museum and other places and Crystal Bridges, which we have a great relationship with them too, to kind of say, hey, here's what you need to be thinking about. But then that led to they had an artist coming in. They were like, hey, let's do something different to promote, this work, which a lot of his work was around like these objects and the story behind them and stuff. And so it was kind of like, how do we create some user-generated stories from Arkansas? And so, they had the concept. We helped expand on it, design it out, build it out, and take it to market. So it was great.
Like Zach mentioned, we love working with museums, and Crystal Bridges is a client as well. Do you guys remember the We the People exhibit?
Oh yeah.
There?
Yeah.
We worked with them on some interactive displays inside the when you were walking through the space, there was some interactive displays at the very end. We designed and built all that, so you could,
wow.
There was a quiz component, there's an educational component to it. That's one thing that I personally enjoy, and I know Zach does as well, is being able to use our capabilities, our skill set to educate, to inform, to inspire people, and that was a great opportunity to be able to do that.
And that type of work, the experiential type stuff, is stuff we do a decent amount of. kind of flies under the radar sometimes of like
Right.
the type of stuff we do. But any kind of, you got to think of it. I mean, interfaces are everywhere. So
Right.
whether they're in your car, whether they're at the museum, whatever, like someone has to design those. Someone has to figure out how that content's going to be managed, what kind of system it is. And nowadays, you can run a lot of that off, or through a web-based structure. So, we've really gotten more and more engaged in that area and do quite a bit of that work and stuff. So it's been fun.
I think there's something like I was looking in. Harvest is or project tracking software we use. Like in the fall of last year, something like we've shipped about 700 products over the last 10 years.
Wow.
Something like that.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
all sorts of different things. I mean, different sizes, but we worked on about 700 projects.
That's amazing. Daniel, what else you got? I see you got a long list.
I got a couple things.
He's got
on,
a
buddy.
book.
You
Yeah.
guys,
Keep
you guys
firing.
are the master coders, correct? Like you guys know what you're doing. It's safe to say.
Our team does.
Your team does. Okay.
I don't want to. We are not. Well, I mean,
Are you going to give us a code test?
I'm not.
Oh,
okay.
I'm going
Oh.
the opposite direction.
Like,
In
I'm
a
gonna need
past
another drink.
In a past life, I was an engineering student. I had to
nice.
take some coding classes, and I cannot emphasize enough how frustrating that was. So, like, what kind of advice would you give to someone who might be beginning and kind of just coming into the development scene?
I think it's like anything. You got to keep at it.
Yeah.
If you want to get good at it, you got to work at it. You can't just give up. I mean, I've often say like the people that don't make it in this world, the people that stop, that
Yeah.
quit. That's why you fail, is because you give up. And a lot of the folks get on the other side of things are just determined, and they focus, and that's how you get your skill set. You make it better, is just constantly challenging yourself and learning and growing, and that's how you become a great coder. I mean, that's simple.
Well, and I think a lot of times it's seen as black and white. Like, hey, I'm going to be a software engineer. I got to learn how to code, kind of thing. The thing is what you realize, there's a lot of nuance in the business of software engineer, and so some of our most talented technical people aren't developers. They are people who have a logic understanding of how software works, but now they are, technical project managers or product owners. And these are the people that have the whole perspective of what's going on in the product in mind as it's going through. So it's not just, but they also have to understand concepts enough to be able to have the conversations with the developers, but also creative enough to have conversations with the designers and know enough of their stuff to be able to rein them in at times on what we're trying to do here. And that's how I got my start. I was a project manager at a web firm, and I didn't know hardly anything, but it's the perfect time to get into it. 2008 is, social media is just becoming really a thing, and dynamic websites were becoming a thing, and mobile, the iPhone hadn't even really been released yet, kind of thing. And so it was a perfect time to kind of learn all that. But I also knew how to talk with developers and designers and things like that. But I knew I also wasn't, Chris Earls, doing all this development and stuff like that. He was way above me, but I had a role to play because he wasn't me either. And so I think that's the other thing. It's like, because it's like, hey, to get into software, I need to be a software engineer. I need to do this. That's not really the case. There's a lot of different roles that get played there. And so it's good to understand it, but it doesn't mean you have to be the expert coder to be in the product world.
That's great insight.
Yeah.
Great insight. Couple of questions that we're going to use to kind of land the plane here. So one is, you've been at this 10 years, you built a great firm, you got a great culture. What comes next? What does winning look like for you over the course of the next 5 years?
That's a great question.
Yeah, that's a very. We could have easily kind of halted growth at the company. Zach and I could have stopped at 15 people or something like that and just kind of coasted. And a lot of agencies do that.
Yep.
But we're kind of the people that love challenges, and we want to grow, and we enjoy the challenge of that, and we love empowering people and pushing them. I think in 5 years, we'll have grown, obviously, in headcounts and complexity of projects, and maybe a location up here. I don't know. We'll see.
Awesome.
Have a physical place.
Love that.
We'll
Yeah.
see. But I mean, it's it's we try to be as flexible as possible. If
Sure.
that makes sense, because we don't want to say that we know exactly what we're doing 100%, because I mean, maybe a pandemic will hit.
Yeah, let's hope.
I don't know.
No more black swan events anytime soon.
I
Let's hope
mean,
not.
you don't know how things are going to happen. Again, it goes back to my thing, my comment earlier.
Sure.
What is 2025 going to be like?
Yeah.
Well, in my perspective is, this doesn't get old to me. Like I enjoy being.
You're enjoying it, right?
Yeah.
I enjoy being a CEO. The biggest thing I enjoy is the meeting and the conversations with these people who are trying to solve problems. They're looking for support in their innovation. They're in the right path. They're like, man, I just see all this stuff happening, and I have this, and I think we can do this. And engaging with them and helping offer solutions and bringing in a team that is just like that's just as excited to do that. It doesn't get old. So I mean, if we're talking 5 years, I have no doubt that it's just kind of there's not major changes per se as far as like what we're doing, but hopefully we're just doing it at a larger scale.
No,
and
absolutely.
continuing to get these referrals and the organic growth, continue to grow and find us. I was in New York a couple of weeks ago, and I'll be somewhere else next week probably, but I wouldn't hate it if like, hey, now we got to get to London. Now we got to get here. Like it's just that's just where
still an
it's just
adventure.
where
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
still there's still a lot of stuff out there.
I'll translate that for our audience. They're hell bent on global domination. I think that's what.
You said it, not me.
Yeah, I mean, we're
Nothing wrong with that, right? Somebody's got to do
We're
it.
competing against ourselves, I
Right,
guess,
yeah.
And one thing that I will say though is we've made a lot of really good decisions and put a lot of hard work
Yep.
into the structure.
It seems
and
like it.
planning, and the team made a lot of investments. It did a lot of the hard stuff to make sure that we
Right.
have that foundation to grow any way we want to. So I mean, it's
Well, here's the final question before I ask for your contact information and all that kind of stuff is, and we ask everybody this if you watched any of the episodes. So if you could take all that accumulated wisdom that you have over the course of the last 10 years and even before that and go back to your younger selves, what advice would you give your younger self? You got a time machine. You're going to head back and find yourself from circa between 2000 and 2008. What would you tell your younger self?
I would say don't be afraid to take the risk. I think if I hadn't have done things like the accelerator program and things like that, those are the things kind of gave me, even though that startup concept didn't work out.
Sure.
Now that's a whole nother story.
It was a rite of passage, right?
Exactly. It was a great educational thing to give me the confidence of, being able to know that whenever like the opportunity of working with Arlton and being the CEO, because it's like at that point I hadn't ever been a CEO before. Sure. I've operated and grown.
You've done a great job, buddy.
Organizations and things like that. But I mean, there's definitely, I had the confidence in that knowledge, and even and now I look back on it like I had no business stepping into that role, and thinking I knew.
Sometimes it's good to
exactly
not know what you don't know. Right?
But I think that's the biggest thing. Even before the art challenge and stuff like that, just my wife was pregnant at the time. Like I knew I was going to have to be away from home, and like that alone was risky, not only from a business standpoint, but just from a family standpoint. Like what, and so I think, looking back on it and telling my younger self, I'd just say, hey, don't be afraid to take that risk.
It's going to be okay, right?
Yeah.
And it's it's going to be okay. You're going to be okay.
Arlton, what about you?
I can't help but want to echo what Zach says. I mean, younger self, I think that there's a lot of, I think that there's a lot to be said about the details of things and not overlooking them, and being thoughtful about the details and not just being complacent around what's set in front of you. Be thoughtful about the details, but I will say to our younger listeners and to folks out there that are listening to this, it's important. I'm sure there's folks out there that are dealing with something where they're like, I need to do something, but they're stuck or they're scared. The thing is, it's going to be all right.
Right.
It's going to be okay.
Right.
It's going to be, and I think strategic risk is the way we grow as a company, as individuals, as a society. Is those strategic risks that push ourselves and help us become the better selves, better companies, better partners, everything like that. So it's
And it's awesome to catch up with you guys. It had been far too long. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having us.
Where can our audience find out more about Few and about you guys? What's the best way for them to connect?
Well, obviously we have a website, few.io, but you feel free to hit us up on LinkedIn. We're trying to stay pretty active there and connect with as many people as possible. But also my email is Zach@few.io. So at any time, they can reach out, and it's with a K, Zach with a K, at few.io, and I'd be happy to engage.
ZACK. Again, Arlton at few.io. Even if you have a question or need some guidance, we're more than welcome to sit with you and give you some thoughts to help you get on the right path. So.
Awesome. Glad you guys are in Arkansas.
Yeah.
Keep it up.
We
love being here. Yeah.
I'll look forward to having another one of these in less than 10 years. We'll get you back on for an update.
You
How
got
about
it,
that?
buddy.
All right.
Let's do it.
Thanks.
Sounds good.
Let's do it.
Thank you, guys.
Ecosystem builders, entrepreneurs, chambers of commerce, mayors. If you're interested in taking your economic future into your own hands, we've got a book that can help you. Creating Startup Junkies, Building Sustainable Venture Ecosystems in Unexpected Places is the guide. It's a little bit inspiration. It's a little bit toolkit. What it will allow you to do is take your economic future into your own hands and build a sustainable small business, innovation, and entrepreneurial ecosystem in your backyard. If you'd like to hear more, check out creatingstartupjunkies.com. The Startup Junkie podcast reaches over 100 countries and has had over 100,000 downloads. If you're interested in reaching some of the most motivated and engaged innovators and entrepreneurs on a worldwide basis, give us a shout.